Hi, I'm Dave Dinkle, and today's deal talk is about two recent no-money deals, including how one student got a $90,000 price reduction on his deal. This is the picture of the property of the first deal. Now, we call this a mini palatial estate, also known as a crack house. The uniqueness about this property was 4,000 square feet on a very large lot in a neighborhood where most of the other homes were 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. The original list price on the property was $260,000. My student made an offer at $140,000. The sellers countered at $175,000 because they'd been unable to sell the property. What happened next is the student got a repair credit by going in and first getting a contractor's estimate of repairs. This is what it looks like. Every one of these is a line item. It's done by a real licensed contractor, and they're real numbers. Now, this is the bottom line. The repair estimate was $342,000, and if you look closely, you can see that dumpsters and dumping fees were $4,560. Why? The place was not only a crack house, it was full of junk like a hoarder. So let's look at what happened. This is the closing statement, the A to B closing disclosure, currently called a CD. This went into effect about a year and a half or so ago. Very few closing agents are using it for cash transactions. It's mostly being used for conventional financing. In this case, the closing agent was also an attorney. He was also a probate attorney, and he was also a licensed realtor. He did everything. Long and short of the story is very simple. This is what the student finally wound up paying after using the estimate of repairs that I showed you on the previous page, asking for a price reduction. He got a $90,000 price reduction. So from being listed at $260,000, he got it for $84,399.14. Actual purchase price was $85,000. Got a credit for taxes, debit for the expenses on the second page of the HUD. I'm not going to go through expenses on the HUD here. It doesn't matter. This is the escrow deposit he had up, zero. Every time I go over this, people say you can't do it, it's not legal. There it is. You're going to see the second one coming up soon. If you learn how to do it, it is legal, and it's done all the time. Now, these are the other pages in the HUD statement, and I just go through them here because they're meaningless. All they are is the expenses, debits, and credits for both the buyer and the seller. This is where the money is, the B2C HUD, where we flipped the property, wholesaled it. What I've done is taken away the names of the players in the game, so to speak, so not to embarrass anyone. I did the transactional funding, so that's why I'm showing you these transactions. $100,000 sale price. Remember, we paid $84,399 and change, sold it for $100,000. Now, based on the property, this was not the greatest sale price in the world. Had he waited a little bit, he would have gotten better. However, it was his first deal, and that's okay. But let's go ahead and see what else happened here. The end buyer, now on the HUD statements, the left side is always B for buyer, right side is S for seller. So the student has now become the seller, and the buyer came in and put up a required $5,000 escrow deposit. Once again, in case he defaulted and didn't close, we might not be able to resell it quickly enough. We default, our escrow deposit is zero. We collect a $5,000 escrow deposit from the end buyer, make money on the transaction, and never close it. Now, here's something that's very unusual, and I want you to see it. Normally, a seller gives the buyer a credit on the A to B side of the transaction for a repair credit or some other credit. In this case, the student is the seller, and he's giving the buyer credit. And if you look here, it says credit from seller. It doesn't say what the reason is. Here's the reason. The original seller of the property couldn't get his brother and the crack addicts out of the house no matter what they tried. As time rolled on, our end buyer, we got 8 extensions with the seller and the end buyer. And the end buyer said, finally, I'm not going to close. If you can't do it by Friday, which is my last extension, I'm not going to close, and I'm going to sue you for breach of contract, which it's an idle threat. But nonetheless, in the course of the conversation, he said, if you give me $5,000 as a discount on my price, a haircut off the price I paid, I'll take care of the crackhead in the house and all the other addicts in there. You don't have to worry about anything. Well, that is cheap. to remove a number of people who are squatters in a property in our area takes a lot of money and a lot of time. So I said to the student, let's take it, but let's go back to the original seller and try and get a discount also. So the student went back to the original seller, said, look, we'll take over. You guys have tried all your legal tactics and nothing has happened at all. Give us a $5,000 credit and we'll do it. And it turned out he negotiated it down to $3,000. The student then went back to the end buyer and said, don't want to pay $5,000, but if you can come down to $3,000, I'll give it to you. Well, the end buyer said, no, but I'll take $3,500. So at the closing on the B2C side, this is what we did. We gave him a $3,500 credit at closing. Now this is the bottom half of the HUD, the B2C HUD. Here's where it shows that the transactional funding that I put in paid for the entire A to B leg of the transaction. So the student had no money in the deal, including even an escrow deposit. This is the actual profit, $8,654.32 plus $3,000. Now what does plus $3,000 do? Remember I said we got the attorney for the seller to give us $3,000. But he was so aggravated, the attorney, the closing agent, real estate agent, and the probate attorney all in one said, I'm not changing the HUD. I will write you a $3,000 check out on my personal account. And he did. So that $3,000 came back to us as a profit. So you're aware of what this looks like. Once all of the money has been paid back for closing the transaction, this is the bottom line. This is the profit on the deal, unless you put up an escrow deposit on the A to B side. If you did, say for example this student put up a $1,000 escrow deposit, this is not the profit. You have to subtract $1,000 from this because you're getting back money you had put in before. In this case, it was an $11,654.32 profit, or about a 13% net profit based on the purchase price. Now, is that important? Well, what's important about it is the student had no money in the deal. If you divide the $11,000 profit by 0, the profit is infinite. It's not the case. The reality is he made the $11,000 and change with no money in the deal. That's what's important, and this is how he did it with transactional funding. To mention about this property is the CD, the closing statement I showed you to begin with, on the A to B or first leg was done with one closing agent, and the B to C transaction, which is this one that we looked at, was done with another closing agent, and they were done on the same day. So when people say, well, what if this and what if that, it doesn't matter. These things can be worked out. Very oftentimes, if an attorney is involved or a bank's involved, either as a short sale or an REO, they will not do an A to B and B to C transaction. They do not like to see an investor going away from the closing table 20 minutes after they arrived and making a profit on the deal. So typically they'll give you an excuse like, it's not legal. We don't do it because of legalities. It's all crap. They don't want to see investors who have no money in the deal make money. It's that simple. So this is a picture of the second property. This is the A to B HUD. Again, I split the HUD in half so it's easier to see. Took out the individual players in the game. Purchase price $115,000. Once again, no escrow deposit. I mentioned it to you before that I would show it to you. Here's the bottom half. Now this is the A to B, the first leg of the HUD, and this is the amount of money the student would need if he was going to close this transaction. Most of the students I work with have little or no money. The very few that have sums of money ranging from $50,000 to millions of dollars, I say to them, it's great to have money, but I want you to learn how to do it without money. When I started in the business, I had money. I was doing very well as a stockbroker. I owned stock brokerage firms, and I could actually close with cash whenever I wanted to. However, many years ago, one day I said to myself, hear about this no money stuff. I'm going to try it. And I said to my wife, for the next year, I'm not going to do any deals with cash. I'm going to do all transactions where I have owner financing, transactional funding, double closings, assignment of contracts, whatever it is. And I did for a whole year. Never took a dollar out of the bank. So this is the top half of the B to C side of the transaction. This is where the money is. This is where we're selling the property and taking out the profit. There's the sales price, $140,000. Now again, this particular student got a discount. Wasn't a giant one. It was like $10,000 or $15,000. But the reality is that $10,000 or $15,000 is extra profit on the deal. Now once again, Here's the escrow deposit. In this case, it's from the buyer. Remember, we're on the B2C HUD, so the investor is now the seller. Buyer put up $8,000. I showed you the student put up 0. In the event this buyer didn't close, we'd make $8,000 on the deal without ever closing. This is the bottom half of the HUD, the B2C side. This is where the profit is. But first of all, transactional funding 100%. Student has no money in the transaction. That's his net profit. So in summary, no money in the deal, net profit of $20,545.22, or 17% net profit on the purchase price. So if you're saying to yourself, is it better to be a realtor or is it better to be an investor? So if you were a realtor and you did these transactions, you wouldn't have made any commission on it because you wouldn't have gotten the listing. But you would have made 17% in this case on the purchase price, so on and so forth. So I'm Dave Dinkle, and I want to wish you limitless success in whatever you do. Thanks very much for joining me today.